Good afternoon. I am Vicki Richker, co-president of Sisterhood. And along with my talented co-president, Barbara Kozlov, we welcome you to Sisterhood's annual Torah Fund event. As with everything else this year, we are navigating the new normal as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. We are meeting virtually this year, and our program is slightly different from previous years, but equally special. The theme for this year's Torah Fund is Together, Beyahad, and together we are celebrating the Women's League of Conservative Judaism and the wonderful work of the Torah Fund campaign and the investment of our future Jewish leaders. Each year, our Torah Fund campaign expresses Sisterhood's commitment to perpetuate and strengthen conservative Judaism through the world. This campaign ensures our legacy to future generations by providing necessary funds to the incredible institutions that educate our future rabbis, cantors, teachers, administrators, social workers, and lay leaders. This year, we are honored to have both Rabbi Brian Strauss and cantor student Neil Tybell talk to us about the Torah Fund campaign, the institutions it supports, and their experience at the Jewish Theological Seminary.
Generally, during the Torah Fund event, we recognize the Martha Lee Stein Women of Achievement Award recipients. This is an award established by the Albert Stein family in loving memory of their wife and mother, Martha Lee Stein. This year, we have decided to look back, and we will take a few minutes to honor past recipients of the award. Over the years, these women have made major contributions to Sisterhood and also made contributions to the synagogue, giving their time, talent, and voices to our community and to Congregation Beth Yeshurun. This is truly a very special group of women, and we want to again recognize and thank them. Today, we are delighted to welcome Tommy Schnurmacher, author of Makeup Tips from Auschwitz, How Vanity Saved My Mother's Life, to our Beth Yeshurun Sisterhood Torah Fund event and introduce him to our community. Mr. Schnurmacher is a radio talk show host and a riveting storyteller. We know you will enjoy listening to him and hearing about his family story. He is delightfully entertaining, and we look forward to his presentation. Now, we want to thank Amy Rahmani at the Evelyn Rubenstein JCC for her assistance in securing Mr. Schnurmacher to speak to us today. Amy provided us guidance and advice during our whole Torah Fund planning, and we couldn't have done it without her. We love partnering with the Ann and Stephen Kaufman Jewish Book and Arts Festival, and so glad we have Mr. Schnurmacher here with us today. His book is on sale at the Beth Yeshurun Sisterhood gift shop, and you may also purchase it on Amazon.
We would also like to give a big thank you to all the Torah Fund guardians and benefactors who will be recognized in a few minutes. Each year, Beth Yeshurun Sisterhood is one of the largest sisterhood donors to Women's League for Conservative Judaism Torah Fund campaign. A special Todah Rabbah to Barbara Coleman, our Torah Fund chairperson. We appreciate all her hard work and her organization skills to make sure that nothing was overlooked. Thanks also to Anita Mattis for contacting and coordinating contributions. A major thank you goes to Jennifer Rosenzweig for her continued assistance in all aspects of this program. We could not have presented this Torah program without Jennifer. Finally, thank you to Jake Tavel, who behind the scenes is the magician bringing this virtual program to you. And now, on with the program.
Initially, and right now, I would like to recognize all of our benefactors and guardians who are graciously contributing to the Torah Fund campaign. This year, our guardians are Helen Brunis, Kelly Cohen-Fine, Bernice Loftus, and Judith Zivley. Thank you very much. Our benefactors are Susan Baum, Rona Caress, Barbara Coleman, Cantor Diane Dorff, and Rabbi Stephen Morgan, Haley Feldman, Sandra Finkelman, Rabbi Sarah Fort, Sheila Franklin, Barbara Golub, Lynn Goldberg, Barbara Horowitz, Lily Horowitz, Sharon Kammerman, Barbara Kozloff, Marty Kunick, Seema Levy, Anita Mathis, Carolyn Plesner, Patricia Rauch, Vicki and Michael Richker, Karen Robinson, Marcy Rosen, Marlene Rosenthal, Jordana Ropeman, Elise Schultz, Toby Siegel, Annette Sondak, Paula Stein, Lisa Strauss, Gail Schwartz, Mimi Tobin, Jane Will, and Judy Yambra. Thank you to all. Quite an impressive list, and we're really pleased because it was a lot harder virtually, but we are so thankful for these many benefactors and guardians.
Now we would like to recognize previous award recipients of the Martha Lee Stein Women of Achievement Awards. And the recipients are that we have in the past are Faye Rosenthal, Selma Leff, Toby Siegel, Myrna Rudolph, Ida Middleman, Lil Most, Marlene Rosenthal, Manette Sheps, Lynn Goldberg, Relda Fingerhofer, Helen Brunos and Evelyn Shore, Linda Katz, Brent Fallodder, Shirley Mandel, Janice Goldstein and Sylvia Schultz, Sheila Franklin and Sandra Shapiro, Rosalie Goldberg, Miriam Joachim, Joan Katz and Barbara Golub, Frida Dow and Winnie Isaacs, Ricky Frankfurt and Brenda Yosowitz, Diane Dushkin and Connie Seisman, Albert Stein family, Sandra Finkelman and Elise Schultz, Elaine Epstein and Ruth Raby, Lily Horwitz and Hedy Spiegel, Riva Shapiro and Jane Schoss, Barbara Koslov and Karen Robinson, Barbara Horwitz, Bonnie Winograd, and Judy Zivley. And now, Rabbi Brian Strauss, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Vicki. And I want to thank Vicki Richker and Barbara Kozlov for all their hard work of turning Sisterhood this year into a virtual Sisterhood. You know, you've had a lot of success with some wonderful programs this year, and you've been able to adapt to this situation and still allowed the women of our congregation the opportunity to come together virtually and to do some wonderful things. So thank you for the hard work that you're doing now and always for our Sisterhood. And I want to thank Barbara Coleman for your hard work today and getting this program up and running virtually. It's such a vital part of our calendar year here at Beth Yeshurun, not just for our Sisterhood, but for our congregation, that we show to the community that we care a lot about the conservative movement and the future of our movement. And the money that we raise today, the money that you raise through your hard work, ensures the future of congregations such like Beth Yeshurun. So thank you. And thank you to all those who made today possible. When I heard that you invited Neil, what a perfect choice. I've had the pleasure of knowing Neil for almost 20 years, and I've seen him grow up to be quite a mensch. And I know he's got a very bright future ahead of him. Let me tell you a little about Neil in my introduction of him. If you don't know Neil, he's a second-year cantorial student at the Jewish Theological Seminary and a graduate of the Frost School of Music at the University of Miami, where he received a bachelor's in music vocal performance. While at Frost, he trained mostly in classical repertoire. Born and raised here in Houston, Neil grew up attending Beth Yeshurun services, and he graduated from Barron Academy, as well as Hillel High School, now, of course, Kehila High. Neil's great passions are singing on the bima, performing opera, and following Houston sports teams. Neil is honored to study at JTS in New York and hopes to make a difference in the Jewish community by helping others experience the inspirational gifts of Jewish music and prayer. And I just want to add that when Neil started speaking to me years ago about wanting to enter the professional cantorial school, to become a professional cantor, I was thrilled. Not only because Neil has talented, and those of you who've heard him, he's got quite a talent for singing. He's got a beautiful voice. But I would say more importantly, what excited me about the fact that Neil is going to become a cantor one day at a synagogue somewhere in North America is that he's quite a mensch. He's a sweet young man with a good heart. And it comes across in his interactions with our members when he leads services for us and runs programs, or it comes across when he's leading us in davening. You really get a sense that he's in touch with God, that he cares about the community, and he's doing the best as he can as a prayer leader, as a shliach tzibor, to take our prayers and bring them up to God. And so I know those are things you can't be taught. And I know who he is, and the man he's become will serve him and the Jewish people and the conservative movement well for many, many years to come. So Vicky, Barbara, what a great choice. And now I turn the floor over to Neil to share a little bit with us today. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Rabbi Strauss. And thank you to Vicky. I'm so excited to speak today at the Torah Fund event. So, although I've only been at JTS for a year and a half, I can already speak to the extraordinary experience that it is to be a JTS student. And although many prestigious universities have degrees in various Judaic fields of study, I believe that none can give a student the multifaceted Judaic foundation that is provided to all students at JTS. There are a number of reasons why I believe JTS is extraordinary, but since I feel much more comfortable singing than speaking, I'm going to keep it to my top three. The first reason is the faculty. They're not only the top rabbis, cantors, and scholars in their respective fields, but they are also emotionally invested in their areas of teaching, as well as their students. For example, working with my Nusach coach last year, Cantor Raphael Frieder, and for even a little bit of this year, Chazan Robert Kival, have been transformative experiences. I returned home to lead high holiday services, and the clergy could already hear and feel the difference in my davening. The second reason is the actual facility. And although I can't be there now, I'm just going to explain a little bit about it and what makes it so great. It's home to the greatest collection of Judaica in the Western Hemisphere. And as a cantorial student, I love going to the Beit Shirah and accessing the countless scores of Jewish music. And although right now everything is virtual, it is amazing to see how they've made these resources available to us online. They go above and beyond during these highly unusual times. The third is the sense of community. As you can probably imagine, discovering that you want to pursue a career path centered around Judaism is not a very common occurrence. From the first day I arrived at JTS, everyone has made me feel welcome. The sense of community is seen when you attend classes, physically or virtually, and everyone contributes. It can be felt in everyone's offers to help each other. I feel so blessed to spend my days knowing that everyone around me is traveling their own path towards a common goal. We are all here to increase our knowledge, strengthen our commitment to Judaism, and become the future leaders and educators of conservative Judaism. I wish I had more eloquent words to describe JTS, but extraordinary seems to do the trick. Webster's dictionary defines extraordinary as beyond the usual and exceptional. JTS is both unusual and exceptional, and I am blessed to be one of its students. I know my years at JTS will help me become a cantor who can share my love of Judaism with congregants and mentor future generations. I also realize that attending JTS is only made possible through the scholarships funded by donations, like those raised today at the Torah Fund. Thank you for helping make my experience at JTS and many others possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neil. Again, welcome and thank you for joining us for the annual Torah Fund event. The theme is B'yachad, together. Only this year, we're virtual. Our speaker today is Tommy Schnurmacher, an award-winning radio host at CJAD Radio in Montreal, Canada. He has been a talk show host for over 20 years. Mr. Schnurmacher was born in Hungary to Holocaust survivors and escaped to Canada as a young boy. His father was a rabbi, both in Hungary and in Montreal. It was later in his life that Tommy joined Chabad in Canada. Not only is Tommy a radio host, but he has been a columnist for the Montreal Gazette. He won a talk show radio award from Alliance Quebec, as well as the Golden Ribbon Award presented by the Canadian Association of Broadcasters. A graduate of McGill University in Montreal and Carleton College in Ottawa, Canada, Mr. Schnurmacher has been a film extra, a storyteller at Woodstock Book Fest, and also hosts a podcast. His first book, The Gold Digger's Guide, How to Marry Rich, was published in 1985. His second book, Makeup Tips from Auschwitz, How Vanity Saved My Mother's Life, was recently published and explores his deep and wonderful relationship with his mother. The text is a mostly humorous recollection of major events in his life as an adult. While the program is being brought to you via Zoom, this is technically a webinar, and as a result, our speaker cannot see or hear you. Tommy would love to hear from you. Therefore, if you have any questions, please write them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen so that Mr. Schnurmacher will be able to respond to them. Now, sit back and enjoy our time by Yachad together.
Thank you very, very much, Barbara. I have to say it's an unbelievable honor to speak at the Beth Yeshurun Sisterhood Annual Torah Fund event. And your theme, as you mentioned, was B'Yachad, together, and it is together with the Women's League for Conservative Judaism that this event is being held in conjunction with the ERJCC Ann and Stephen Kaufman Jewish Book and Arts Festival in Houston. And I'm very pleased to be here. Now, you expect that from an author, right? He's going to say that. He's very pleased to be here. Of course, he's going to say that. But in this case, as I did the research for this group that I'm talking about and the Torah Fund, and what is the Torah Fund and what do? They raise money for institutions that help train rabbis, including the Jewish Theological Seminary. Jewish Theological Seminary, where have I heard that before? My father is a graduate of the Jewish Theological Seminary, not the one in New York, but the one in Budapest. So I felt that there was an immediate connection. Now, then when I heard the rabbi speaking, it reminded me of an occasion at a synagogue here in Canada. This is about a year ago. This is even before my book was published. What happened is there were some speakers at the beginning. There was a speaker, and then the rabbi came on, and then the rabbi introduced me. The first speaker, what he was saying, because it was just before the high holidays, he was saying, you know, we're here. It's very important. It's just before the high holidays, and I know a lot of you think, you know, it's a lot of money to join the synagogue, and it's just for 3 days. And I want to tell you, it's not for just 3 days. We're here for you 365 days a year. And it's very important to join the synagogue. That was what the guy was saying before the rabbi came on who introduced me. So I had a beginning prepared for this presentation, and I changed it completely. Why? Because as this guy was talking about buying tickets for the synagogue and buying membership, it reminded me of something. My father was a rabbi of a synagogue, a much smaller one, much smaller than Beth Yeshurun, a little, tiny little synagogue, a little shtivel. And Mom was in charge of selling the tickets. Okay, and she had these big cardboard pieces of paper. There's the top ticket price, the middle one, and the lower price for the men, and the same thing for the ladies. And she would put little squares, and in the square she would put in Mrs. Spiegelman and Mrs. Goldberg, and she'd put in who sat where. Okay, so this was very important to her. She was very much in charge of tickets for the show. So one day she gets a call. Hello, Mrs. Schnurmacher. I want to buy tickets for the high holiday services, but I don't want to go for the whole thing, for all of the Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. I want to go just for the Yizkor. If I want to go just for the Yizkor, how much are the tickets? And my mother's response is, before I answer you, I want to tell you, do you remember the movie Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton? It was my favorite film. I loved that film. There's such a romantic couple. And my favorite scene in the movie is a very romantic scene when Richard Burton is kissing Elizabeth Taylor. That's my favorite scene in the movie. If I want to go to the Metropolitan Theater and just see the kissing scene, is there a discount on the price? No, no discount here either. So that was the story that I was reminded of. Now, my mother, wow, what a lady. Now, my book tells a story of how my mother got two world-famous Nazis to save her life, but it's really more about the impact that had on our relationship. As a child, what I wanted to do, a second-generation child of a Holocaust survivor, I wanted to undo the Holocaust. I want to fix the Holocaust. Of course, you can't do that. You can't undo it. It happened. But as a child, you want to do that. So I became very protective, as second generation kids are. I became very protective of my mother. If I had a problem, I couldn't tell her my problem. Look what she went through. How could I compare that with what I'm going through? So I would never tell her my problems. And as she would tell me the whole story, she told me the entire story. How did it start? She and her sister are walking down a little dusty road in a little shtetl in Hungary in 1944, and they're saying that they're bored. There's nothing that's happening in their life, and nothing interesting ever happens in their life. And a year later, she and her sister are in a cattle car hurtling towards Auschwitz. Now, I want you to know the character, what type of woman my mother was. You know, I'm sure what Auschwitz is all about and what those cattle cars, what the conditions in the cattle cars were like, etc. My mother arrives, she's young and fit, she jumps off the cattle car, and the first person she sees is a guy in a sort of a white medical outfit. That is Dr. Joseph Mengele, the first world famous Nazi who sees her. And he can send her to one direction, send her to the gas chamber. He can send her in the other direction, send her to labor camp. She's young and fit, sends her to the labor camp. Now, picture this. She's in the death camp of Auschwitz. What is she thinking about? She's thinking about the fact that the prison outfit they gave her, the striped uniform they gave her, she doesn't like it. She doesn't like the way it fits. So my mother takes her daily ration of bread. She doesn't want to eat it. The outfit looks bad. She exchanges the bread in Auschwitz for needle and thread. And with the needle and thread, she sews it up so the outfit fits properly. Now the outfit fits fine. Her parents had gotten her new shoes for the holidays, for Shavuot, and they're scuffed. She's not happy with that. So the black swill that they served as coffee, instead of drinking it, she uses it to shine her shoes. Then she takes her nails and does like this. She scratches her cheeks, gets a little bit of blush. The shoes are clean. The outfit fits. Now she feels better. Morning roll call. Irma Greza, on whom they based the character Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS, one of the female commandants of Auschwitz, says, "You get out of the line." My mother gets out of the line, and Greza asks her, "How can a Jew look like this in a place like this?" And what does my mother do? She tells her the truth. And then Irma Greza says, "Well, in that case, you're clean enough, you're neat enough, you can be my personal valet." And my mother ended up being her personal valet, cleaning her bicycle, cleaning her boots, tending to her garden. And that's how she managed to survive Auschwitz. Grace asked me, I've even told her, how old are your parents? My mother told her, they're gone, they're dead. Did you have any other siblings? I had a sister. How old was her sister? Same age. She looks it up. The Nazis had such impeccable records. She looks up the name of her sister. She finds her sister. Her sister was working in the Canada section of Auschwitz. They called it Canada because it was wealthy. That's where they went through all of the stuff they stole from the Jewish prisoners. And so Grace arranged for my mother to meet her sister and actually allowed them to speak for 10 minutes. That was a great kindness of the time. Now, the Holocaust ends. She's liberated from Auschwitz. 10 years later, we get to the Hungarian Revolution. But before we get to that, I wanted to explain what this vanity means. Vanity is not necessarily a positive concept, but I'll tell you why it is positive in my mother's case. The Nazis were telling her, you are nobody, you are nothing, you do not count, you are not a human being, you have nothing, you are zero. And my mother, by making herself look better, was saying, wrong, you're wrong, I am somebody, I have dignity, I do count, I will do as much as I can in a place like this to retain that courage and that dignity. So she retained that, and also it took a lot of guts and daring, and that came up later in life as well, and something that I inherited from her over the years. 10 years later, right, she went back to her house in Hungary. She met my father. They got married. They lived in Hungary. I was born, and then in 1957, around the time of the Hungarian Revolution, my uncle had sent somebody over and told us we have to leave in the middle of the night, and somebody will take us in a car and drive us to a place where we will walk across a field, and if we keep walking long enough, we'll get to the Austrian border and be able to escape Hungary. So my mother tells me that I have a choice. I can't bring much in the suitcase. I have a choice. I can only bring one toy. I have two toys that I like. I like the wooden streetcar, and I like my mandolin. I think the wooden streetcar doesn't do much. It just sort of sits there. But the mandolin, I can play the mandolin. So I take my mandolin with me. Now, who's taking us across the border? In order to prevent people leaving the workers' paradise, the Russians had planted landmines across this field. And the guy who planted the landmines, he had a sideline. He would help families escape afterwards. He'd say, you pay me enough money. I know where the landmines are. I'll guide you through it so you don't step on any of the landmines. And that's how my parents had arranged to go with this group. And we were going to cross in the middle of the night and try to avoid all of the landmines on the field. And as we're walking along, I decide, what would be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if I started to strum my mandolin? And I start playing the mandolin. And then what happens is that guide takes the mandolin, smashes it on my head, thus ending my musical career. Because, of course, if they'd heard the music, the Russian soldiers would have shot us. And by the way, you know what this guide did? Get this. He charged a certain amount to take us over. Quarter of the way through, he says, I'm too tired. Give me some more money. We give him more money. Half of the way, he says, now I'm even more tired. He wants more money. And just before we got to the Austrian border, just before we got there, he says, give me all your money. So my parents and I arrived in the Austrian border without 1 cent. My father, by the way, he heard that the streets of Canada, just like the streets of America, are paved with gold. So there's no point in bringing gold and silver, right? But you know what was very valuable in Hungary at the time? Fake plastic. Imagine. So he had a roll of fake plastic that he was schlepping with him across the border. We got to Austria safe and sound, and then we flew to Canada. Now, when we get to Canada, my parents don't speak a word of English or French. I don't speak a word of English or French. We get to Canada and go to school. And then my mother says one day that I can't go to school. Why can't I go to school? She says, I can't go to school because it's too cold. I said, it's too cold. All the other kids are going to school. Why can't I go to school? She says, because Canadian parents don't love their children. She told me, and I actually believe this. Like, she was just very, very overprotective of me. Now, I want you to know that, you know, like in Canada, in Montreal especially, it's very, you know, it gets very cold in the winter. Kids like to go skating. They like to play hockey. So I, like the other kids, I also wanted to go skating and play hockey. And so my father bought me a pair of skates. And my mother says, okay, if you want to take him to go skating, he will go on the ice and he will fall and he will hurt his head and crack his head open, and the brain will fall out from the head and the blood will come out from the head and will soak the ice and be pink. First we'll start with pink and then we'll get red with the blood. Anyway, all I needed to hear this. I didn't go skating to this day. I don't know how to skate. I don't know how to ride a bicycle. I do not have a driver's license. All of this, a legacy of second generation of that there was something so bad could have happened to the relatives and did, that they're so overprotective of the child they wanted to spare me. First day of school sitting in school in grade 1, and I don't speak a word of English. And the teacher's talking, and everybody in the class gets a piece of paper. Everybody in the class gets a pencil. I have a piece of paper, I have a pencil, and the teacher's talking, but I don't know what she's saying. I have no clue what she's saying. So I don't know what I'm going to do. So I look, so what's the girl next to me, what's she doing? So I look over her, and she's writing something on the top right-hand side of her piece of paper. So I look, what is she writing? So I see that she's writing the letters M-A-R-I-E. Oh, okay, I get it. So then I take my pencil and I write M-A-R-I-E. I had no idea it was her name. So the teacher got 2 pieces of paper from Marie and none from me. None from me at all. Another example, later on, let's stay in elementary school for a second. I forgot my lunch. So my teacher, Miss Wadman, I remember her name to this day, said, Tommy, don't worry, I'll buy you lunch. And we go to a little snack bar near the school, and she says, would you like a hot dog? A hot dog? I'm thinking, can't be. No, not even in Canada. I mean, they're not going to serve a dog to eat. Can't be a dog. Must be some kind of candy. It's a candy. It must be candy. Of course I want a candy. Yes, I'll have a hot dog. She orders it, and it arrives, and I look what it is. It's meat. I'm thinking to myself, this is not kosher. If I can't eat this, but I can't say no to her. I'm not going to upset her. Miss Wadman, what's that? What's that up on the, what does that say over there? And while she's looking at what I'm pointing, I take the hot dog and throw it on the floor. And she says, oh, Tommy, you must have been so hungry. Would you like another one? No. I don't want another one. Another occasion, I was upstairs at a friend's house who's Ukrainian. I'd had my lunch. He's having his lunch. And he's having a steak. And he says, Mommy, I'm thirsty. So his mother gets up, goes to the fridge, and takes out a glass of milk. She's coming with the milk, and she gives him the glass of milk. I see the steak in the milk. I knock the milk off the table. I run downstairs to my mother and say, you have to call the police right away. The lady upstairs, she wants to kill a child because he's going to have the milk and meat together and he's going to kill him. And my mother explains to me, no, that's not the way it happens. It doesn't apply to everybody. It's not going to kill him. So these were the ways I slowly learned how to live in Canada, how to live in North America, and how different it was from Hungary. But the over protection was just astonishing. And this is typical of Holocaust survivors when they're overprotective of their children. One day in high school, I did well in high school, and I got a scholarship. It was $10, and you could use a gift certificate, and you go to a department store downtown and get $10 worth of books. And my friend Howard he also got a scholarship, and he had the $10. So his mother drove the two of us from the high school right after school to the department store, and we picked up our books with our gift certificate, with our scholarship that we'd gotten from the high school. She's driving us home, and we hear on the radio that Tommy Schnurmacher has been missing for a week. And my friend's mother says, where have you been for a week? I said, what do you mean, where have I been? I said, at home. I'd go to school. Well, why are they saying you've been missing for a week? She takes me upstairs to my mother, and my mother said, oh, thank God he's alive. And what do you mean of course he's alive? I picked him up at school. We went to get some book certificates. Why would you call the radio and say that he was missing for a week? They said the police were looking for him. Why would you tell that to the police? She says, you think if I tell the police he's missing for 2 hours, they're going to go look for him? Of course not. So she told the police that I'd been gone for a week. And she said the only reason she didn't call the Royal Canadian Mounted Police is she couldn't figure out how to spell it. Otherwise, she would have had them looking for me. This is all part of that unbelievable overprotection. Now, I had a very close relationship. I had a very close, intense relationship with my parents. I wanted the Beatle album in 1965, Beatlemania. I said, Daddy, please, could I have the Beatle album? He said, well, buy it from your allowance. I said, I already spent it. He said, well, buy it from your next week's allowance. No, Daddy, please, I want to have it now. It has just the best songs on it. Please, Daddy. So my father was all chesed, kindness, and no gevura, and nothing, he couldn't be harsh with me at all. He was always very kind to me. And before I get back to this Beatlemania story, I have to tell, I remember one day at recess, I'd forgotten lunch. He brought me my lunch, and he saw some stripes on my cheek. And he said, what is that? I said, well, Rabbi Nizhnik slapped me because I was speaking and when I said he slapped me, my father was running up the stairs. I'm trying to explain to him it's because I was bad. I talked in class, but I couldn't explain to him because he was running faster than I was. And he got up to the rabbi and he grabbed him by the collar and said, don't you ever lay a finger on my son again. He says, well, your son was laughing in class. He said, good, I survived the Holocaust. I'd like to hear about him laughing. I don't want to hear him crying, and don't ever touch him. Then he looks at me and he says, you don't talk during the davening next time. He tells me that. But let's get back to the Beatles story. So he buys me this Beatle album, right? And I am thrilled beyond belief. Now, fast forward half a century. No, okay, I lied. 40 years. Fast forward 40 years. He's passed away. I'm visiting him on his yahrzeit. I'm visiting him at the cemetery. And as he got older, I'd always hang out with him and say in Hungarian, Daddy, okay, Vaj, Daddy, are you okay? Is everything okay? And he'd say yes. And then 10 minutes later, I said, Daddy, are you okay? Everything okay? Are you okay? He said yes. So I'm at the cemetery. I'm looking down at the tombstone, at the Matseva, and I'm saying, Daddy, are you okay? As I say that, Beatlemania starts playing throughout the entire cemetery. What? How could that be? Not one song. I listen to the song and I dance. Then it's the next song. And I stand there stunned. The entire album played in the cemetery. How's this possible? Well, the cemetery is not next to a public swimming pool. It was a hot summer afternoon, and they had a beach party at the swimming pool, and they were playing music. But the point of it was that they're playing exactly that music, the whole album, exactly at that time, exactly when I asked him, are you okay? And that moment when he gave me that Beatle album, and I was so thrilled he gave me the money for the Beatle album, it sort of reminded me, it just shows the connection with a parent, whether they're here or they're gone physically, but the love that was there then is there now. It hasn't been, never mind, cut. It hasn't even been altered. Now, one of the things I fell in love with when I was a young kid, I fell in love with the idea. I lived in Montreal. I fell in love with the idea of New York City and going to New York City. I convinced my mother I want to go to New York City. Took a lot of lobbying. Now, you know what happens when you take your kids somewhere, right? You think, I want to make sure the kids have something fun to do, right? That they're busy. No, that's not what my mother was thinking. She was thinking it. She wanted to go to New York for one reason. My mom wanted to go to Macy's in New York, Gimbel's in New York, and on 34th Street at the time in 1965, there were stores that all had the same sign in the window. All dresses, $5. And mom wanted to make sure that she went into every single one of these dress shops. Now, am I interested in going into these dress shops? No. So mom says, here's the deal. For each 10 dress shops you come with me to, You get to go to one museum. Not knowing any better, I thought that was a good deal. So I went to dress shop after dress shop. Yes, that's a size 16, that's a 14, that's a 16, that's a 12. And then I got to go to the Museum of Natural History. Mom took one picture of me next to a cigar store Indian and said she was bored of this, and that was it. And then we were back to the dress shops. Now, when we arrived, because we almost didn't have the trip, as we arrived at the train station, Grand Central Station, she says, "Oh, war has broken out. We have to leave." I said, "No, there's no war. We're not leaving. We're walking along 7th Avenue to this hotel I found for $10 a night." So you can tell how long ago this was. $10 a night. It's on 42nd Street and 7th Avenue. On the way, Mom sees a store that sells brassieres. Only brassieres, nothing else. Mom's never seen anything like that in Budapest. She's never seen anything like that in Montreal. She says, "Tommy, I'm going to go in and buy something." She goes into the store. She says, "You wait outside with the luggage." I'm waiting outside with the luggage. 10 minutes later, Mom comes out. She's very happy, good mood. She's got a plastic bag. Inside is a bra. We go to the hotel. She goes to the bathroom. She puts it on, comes out, and she's not happy. Didn't fit. She put it back in the plastic bag. Says, "Tommy, would you return it?" And even then, at age 14, I don't think they return. I don't think they're going to want to return a brassiere. So, what does Mom do? She says, "No problem." She says, "You return it. So you know where you're smart. You're a smart guy. You know exactly where it is. You go return it." So I go back to the store. I said, "My mother just bought this bra. I'd like to return it." "I'm sorry, we don't take bras back." Are you the owner of the store?" "Yes, I'm the owner of the store." "How long has this store been here?" "This store has been here for 30 years. I said, "In the 30 years that this store has been here, has a 14-year-old kid ever come back trying to return his mother's bra?" He said, "Okay, no. Okay, I'll give it to you." And I get the refund. So she took me to New York. And by the day we left, this was 1965. Guess what happens when we're at the train station? We're at the train station, and the lights go out. There's a blackout, a complete and total blackout. And there's nowhere to sit. And Mama says, "Be quiet, wait here." She goes and stands in the middle of the station and yells, "Sabotage, sabotage, the Russians are coming, the Russians are coming." Everybody runs off in all directions. The bench is now empty. Now we can sit on the bench, and we waited there till the following morning when the train started again. Again, to pay her back, to do what I can to make sure she was okay. She would tell me things like, like, "It's your job to make me happy." I only found out later, after years of therapy, that no, actually, the job of the child is to be a child. It's not the job of the child to make a parent happy. But I took her to, because I covered the Academy Awards for the Montreal paper, and I took her with me. So she took me to New York when I was a kid. I took her to Los Angeles when I was covering the Academy Awards as a reporter. And I had a press pass for myself, of course. And my friend Denny, who worked for the Associated Press, she said, "Tommy, you know what? I have a press pass. I only need it for the arrivals. There's another reporter covering the major part of the Academy Awards. I can give you, I finished covering that. I've got enough already. Take my press pass and give it to your mom." So Mom and I are standing there with our two press passes, and all of a sudden, my friend Denny comes back and says, "The reporter who was supposed to cover the main event, he called in sick. I have to cover it. I'm sorry, I need my press pass back." Well, it's her press pass. I have to give it back, right? So I give it back. So now I have my press pass on my neck. I hand it to Mom, and then she hands it back to me. And then a 6'4" black LA cop comes over and looks at her, looks at me, says, "Okay, which one of you two is Tommy Schnurmacher? Mama said, oh, sorry, officer, he is Tommy Schnurmacher. He has a past. I don't, but it's okay. I will walk home alone by myself at night in Los Angeles, all by myself. Don't you worry if I will get raped. And the guy said, no, 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 you're not going anywhere. You're not walking home alone. Puts his arm around her and takes us over to the red carpet and lets us see the whole thing. So I took her to LA for the Oscars. But you know what happened at the Oscars, by the way? Right at the after the Oscars, they take the winners to the newspapers, newspaper reporters, then the radio reporters, then the TV reporters, and then and when they brought it into where we were, the first TV, then radio, then the newspapers. And so I'm with my mother in the newspaper section. And when Robert Redford came in, he'd won the award for Ordinary People. He was such a big star at the time that none of the reporters there had the nerve to ask a question. Who raises her hand? My mother. Excuse me, Mr. Redford, now that you've won the Oscar for Best Director, are you going to run for president? And he laughed, etc. And that's how the questions got started. I also took her, not content, how many kids do this, eh? I also took her to the Cannes Film Festival. Cannes Film Festival, we're at the casino, we're playing at the casino. I said, Mom, I said, when you cheat, when we play at home and you cheat at blackjack, it's cute. And we love it and we think it's very funny. Over here in France, if you cheat, they take you to jail. Don't cheat. And she was nice, she didn't. I took her to the Moulin de Mougins restaurant. And when we're at the restaurant, she says, oh, look, there's Omar Sharif. I said, no, 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 you can't go over and bother her. And I explained to her why she can't go bother a celebrity. Meanwhile, what am I doing? I'm explaining it to her back because she's already walking towards Omar Sharif. I'm so embarrassed. What is she going to do? I don't know what to do. I'm completely embarrassed about all this. And I look over. What do I see? Omar Sharif is going over to another table. He's getting a chair. He's bringing the chair over. My mother sits down in the chair, and the next thing I see is Omar Sharif's hand, and my mother takes his hand, and she's looking at his hand, and she's reading his palm, which is very interesting, because she knows nothing about palm reading. She's never done that before in her life, but she figured just to keep this going, this is something that she would do. And this is some of the what she told me. There was also a story, if we get to it later, we talk about blackjack. I bought her, she said, I want a dog like Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor has a Saltese. I want a Saltese like Elizabeth Taylor. I said, it's not a Saltese, it's a Maltese. Okay, I want a Maltese. I get her the Maltese, it barks, it's a disaster. People come and complain in the apartment building she lives in and ask her, why does your dog bark so much? Mama says, because it's not a cat. And my father pleads with me to get rid of the dog. I try to get it adopted. I know the head of the SPCA. I said, please get this dog adopted. And if you can't get it adopted, just tell me and I'll take it back. And so, good. Finally got rid of the dog. Weeks later, I go home. I hear the dog barking. What happened? I took it to the SPCA. What's it doing back home? You know what mother did? She went, took a cab to the SPCA. She says, I would like to adopt a dog. I want it to be white and the Maltese. Oh, I think we have one. They go to the cage, take out the dog, who, needless to say, runs over to mom's lap. Oh, he really seems to like you. Yes, he does. And she readopts her dog from the SPCA. Now, one of the wonderful things that Jo said later on as she got older, whenever she went to, when I went to visit her in the retirement home, she always said to me at the end of each visit, she always says, have a good life. That was her message to me all the time. Have a good life. Now, how we're doing time-wise, I have a quick little story and a quick little reading. How's that? And then we get to the questions. Is that okay? Am I doing okay? Nod to me, and then I'll do that. It's a very short reading, a short little story, and then we go to questions. Okay, so let's start with the reading. After mom had her regular checkup, her doctor suggested I might want to take her to the geriatric clinic for some tests. Why on earth would I want to take her to a geriatric clinic? She's not that old. She's not geriatric. The doctor looked at me the way B. Arthur used to look at Betty White. I figured you were around 60, and since she's your mother, I jumped to the radical conclusion she's probably a bit older than you are. Everyone's a comedian. We left his office, but I did decide to take Mom to the clinic. And after having her pulse checked and her blood pressure measured, Mom was required to answer some questions. Do you know who is the President of the United States? Yes, I do. Well, who is he? Barack Obama, of course. You're a doctor and you don't know who is the president? Maybe you're not a good doctor. I do know. I'm asking you these questions to see how good your memory is. My memory is excellent. I still remember going to Auschwitz where they shaved off my hair and gave me a tattoo. What do you remember? This is not going well. I figured I better do something to distract Mom. Maybe after this appointment, Mom, we can go shopping. You want to go shopping? Yes, but first we have to go finish with this doctor who has a bad memory. Just a few more minutes and we're done, madam. Here's a piece of paper and a pencil. Just write down a full sentence, any sentence that you like. Take your time. Mom took the pencil. She paused, looked at me, and wrote something on the paper. Your mom has no problem writing a sentence. What did she write? I love my son. After the appointment, the doctor told me my mother was fine. She just had a mild case of dementia, nothing to worry about. What a quack. How could he mention my mother and the D word in the same sentence? Before I hired a living caregiver, there are quite a few I'd hired on a part-time basis, some more successful than others. Mom told one bossy caregiver to find other employment. Why, I'm sure they would pay you big money to work in the circus. You get to travel. Why be stuck in Montreal with me? Many of the help I hired were from the Philippines, but one day I found somebody who was Hungarian. She showed up the next day on a Shabbos. I didn't have a chance to interview her. She arrived at the building as I was leaving for shul. I introduced myself and told her I'm sure she and my mother would get along very well. That morning, my prayers, my davening was more intense than usual, as I repeatedly asked the Master of the Universe to intervene to make sure everything worked out well with Mom and Iboya. My prayers went unanswered. I arrived home to see Mom sitting on the lobby couch looking at Iboya, scowling at her with a look that bordered on loathing. Good Shabbos on you. How are you? Borzasto, I will feel much better when this kurva goes home. Tell her to go home. She said all this while glaring at Iboya, who looked like she was no longer surprised at being called a kurva. I make your mother nice lunch, and she love it. I didn't love it. I did not have lunch. Look at her. Look at those sagging breasts, so big. If she leans over, they fall into the soup. Who has breasts so large? She looks like a cow from Pasto. Tell her to go home. Tell her to go to hell. Okay, Iboya, would you like to take a break? Sure. She left, and Mom thanked me for getting rid of her. I hope she never comes back. She has to come back to have to take care of her. My mother called back later and said that she hadn't come back. I said, I'm surprised. I was told she was reliable. I hope she's all right. I'll call the agency to find out what happened. Maybe she had an accident. She's too fat to have an accident. Anyway, later I did catch up with Iboya. Your mother say I'm fired. I did come back. Your mother say I'm fired. I tried to open door. She starts screaming. She throw my purse in hallway. She slammed the door. She say, if I call again, she call police and say I am spy. I told her it's your son who hired me. She said, then go to his house and take care of him. Iboya was the last of the Hungarians. Now, a quick little story because they're tenants, and then we get right to the questions. And this one is, my parents had a little duplex. They lived downstairs. Tenant lived upstairs. And the tenant calls and says, Mr. Schnurmacher, there's no heat. Move to Florida, is her answer. The tenant calls back, I'm serious, there's no heat. Well, don't walk around naked like a tzatzkele and close the window. And then the police arrived. We have a complaint. What's the complaint? Well, your tenant called and says there's no heat. What are you? The heat police. Go catch a crook. And my father perked up and said, who was that? My mother said, somebody selling chocolate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schnurmacher. would love to have some questions at this time. Currently, we don't have any, so please put your questions in the Q&A box. Mr.
You know,
Schnurmacher, I've read your book. I could not put it down. It was so delightful. I felt like I was actually living in your house with your mother and you.
oh, wow, great.
Yeah, it really came alive and was very beautiful. Your use of the English language to describe what was going on. Could you tell the audience a little bit about how you discovered how old your mother really was?
Yeah, so that's part of the mystery at the end of the book. It was very important for my mom to be very, very young. When we went to a dress shop together, and they said, "Would you like to show this to your son?" They'd never get the sale. If they say, "Would you like to show it to your husband?" If they felt she was younger, then they would get the sale. One day, coming home from synagogue, she was sitting in the park with her friends, and they're asking her how old she was, and she said, "I am 55," which was very interesting because I was 60 at the time. So she was the only one who had a son who was 5 years older than she was. And it was only really at the very end, and it's part of the mystery of the book, what happened at the very end. Like, I'd written the book and I had no ending for the book, and then Mom, amazingly enough, found her own ending. But age was such a, again, it's the vanity. She wanted to be very young. My mother was 40 years old for at least 25 years. You know, she was 39, then 40, then 40, then 40, then 40, then 40. And it was only by the time she was 70s that I was allowed to say that she was older. I remember once being at a cafe with her, and I said, if I didn't know who she was, I said, my mother's really like an older lady. Like, I didn't use the word elderly to describe her till her mid 90s. Like, I wouldn't dare do it in her 60s or her 70s or her 80s. Like, the elderly, I couldn't use that. Now, a lot of what she did, she taught me a lot of chutzpah. I managed to get in when I was 18 years old to see John Lennon and Yoko Ono at the Bed-In in Montreal, and spent a week with them there. A lot of what I did in my career, the guts I inherited from her. But in what it is with second generation is there's all kinds of foibles that second generation have, and they went through the trauma, and we as second generation still have that trauma. But there's positive and negative. They're overprotective of us. We're overprotective of her. We're very good as second generation children of Holocaust survivors at catastrophization. Like, when I was in New York, I was going to go to Italy in February, just before the pandemic really broke out, and cancel it. And I figured, well, if I can't go to Italy, at least I'll go to New York. And I was in New York, and at the time they said there were no cases in New York. I thought to myself, Kennedy Airport, it takes 20 minutes to drive by that place. All the people coming in from Italy, all the people coming in from China, not one person having it, impossible. So what I did is I called my friends. I said, go to Costco, stock up on tuna and toilet paper. The world's going to be a very different place, like in a couple of weeks from now. Are you crazy? Are you nuts? They told me they didn't believe it, because in North America, you're not used to bad things happening as you are if you're a survivor, not only having survived, from my parents' point of view, having survived the Holocaust, but having survived the Hungarian Revolution as well. So I can't ride a bike and I don't know how to skate, but I was pretty daring and managed to do all kinds of things in my career that most other people wouldn't dare to do. That's a long answer, isn't it, to that one question?
Well, thank you very, very much to everyone for joining us by Yachad together. And it was a pleasure to have Mr. Schnurmacher with us to talk about his mother, talk about the exciting book that he has. This book is available in the Beth Yeshurun gift shop. I encourage everyone to read it. It is a must read. I could not put it down even to go to bed. It is that good and such pleasure. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you to Neil Teibel and Rabbi Strauss, to Barbara Koslov, to Vicki Rishker, and to most of all to Jennifer Rosenzweig, who is the brains behind the Beth Yeshurun Technology Department. Thank you again.